Today we'll work on the fuselage and just the rest of the plane basically. To do that, I'll ask you to go in edit mode, then select the corner vertex of our intake, and then we will extrude it just to trace this line at the top here. Once again, try to match the number of vertices that you have for the other parts closer to the mirror axis. And I'll just do that for the whole length of the plane. And you can see our cross sections don't perfectly match here, and it's up to us to decide whether we want to follow them or if we should adjust. I'll set my pivot to active element, and then I will just rotate it or scale it if needed. Now I'll select all of those vertices, and we're going to move them just a little bit. Now we'll do the same thing for the bottom. So select the bottom corner and then extrude it the same number of times you did for the top. Now here we may need a little bit more geometry because of this curve, but I will not complete it for now. We will try to connect this later on. But already gives us a good idea of the volumes of the plane. Now we have this issue with the cross section again. And I'll just lower my vertices at the top here just a little to try to get closer to them. I'll dissolve this one right over here just to get a straighter line. Then I will add one near each cross section and then merge at last, just like this, and I can dissolve those two vertices. And I'll move this one upward just a tiny bit. And I'll dissolve those two on the other cross section and do the same thing. So add a loop cut to add the vertex, then merge at last. Now for this one, it's not really needed because the cross sections kind of fill in this area. So I will merge this one at last. But you can see that we have a very wiggly line, and this is not great. So you could dissolve vertices, but I'm just going to move them manually this time. And I will do another merge at last, just like this. Now let's create a few more faces. So I'll select the vertices at the bottom, then I will extrude them. Sorry, I'll just move them a tiny bit beforehand, just to match the blueprint. Just to get a little bit more curvature on the side. Then I will extrude them vertically. At about the same level as this vertex on the intake. So then I will slide them back just to get a bit more even geometry. Shade Auto Smooth, just to get rid of those weird normals. Then I'll select the bottom vertices, and I'll do a backup just before, just in case something goes wrong. So I'll extrude them once again, just like this. Again, try to match the vertices on your intake. That way it's easier to fill in, it gets you cleaner geometry and better surfaces. Yeah, don't forget to save regularly. Just that way you don't lose much progress if it crashes. Now I'll select the vertices of this dorsal part right here, but not the one connected to the fuselage directly. Then I'll extrude it and move them just a little bit. I'll move them vertically a little bit more, and then I will scale them on the z-axis just to make it a bit flatter before moving it on the x-axis. Basically, I just want to make it smaller because it has this kind of taper in real life. Now here I'm just adjusting vertices like this before filling in this face and connecting it to the rest. Now I'll select those edges and fill them together. Then you may have some weird edges here, delete them. This is because we didn't use our curve network. We created new ones instead, and that's fine. You just need to delete those edges when they're not used. And you can see I probably have another one right here. That is weird again. And if this happens to you, just fiddle around. You may need to merge by distance or find an edge that was weird or that was connected to two vertices that are not supposed to. So just move vertices around and press right click on your mouse to reset them in position to see if, but in my case it was an edge that was connecting the front and the back of this part that caused this issue. So I just deleted it and then refilled the face. And now you can see it's another one, and it's probably just the tail that connects to this part that caused this problem. And yeah, it was actually just the vertice not clipping into the mirror, and to do that just turn on clipping like I did and move it on the x-axis. Sorry for this small delay, but I think it's important to show you mistakes and things that can happen to you while you're modeling as well. All right. Now I'll make this a little bit flatter. I think it was a bit too high right now. And that looks pretty good. We will leave this part alone for now and go back to the bottom of the plane. Now I'll select all of the vertices right here, right up until the intake. So not the one that touches the intake, but all the other ones. And I'll extrude them until they clip on the mirror. Then I will delete. I will actually move some edges to kind of match our curve network that we did. And I will delete the remnant of the cross sections that we didn't use in the end. And I'll delete those two vertices and move them up, just to match the blueprint basically. And we'll do the same for this one. Now to connect the intake to the rest of the fuselage, we're going to need to think a little bit. And to do that, I'll probably start by connecting this circular part. But before, I want to touch on the top again. Just a little bit. Whenever you see something wrong, I think it's sometimes better to adjust it right now while you see it, rather than wait. And so if you need to make some small tweaks or adjustments, feel free to do those. Now I'll select the vertices at the top of our fuselage here, right up until the end of the wing. Actually, let's select only the ones before the wing starts. And then I will extrude it once, right until the end of the wing if you want. And then we'll connect those. Now you can see that we have a twist that's not looking very good, and we will need to adjust that. So select the vertices on your intake and then move them outward just to match the curvature that we had on the other vertex. I'll do the same at the bottom actually. Just a tiny bit. I'll select this middle vertex over there. I'll add the loop cut just because I know that the wing will be there, and I also want to have a bit more geometry to create this curve on the intake corner. Now you can see it's still not pretty, and I will select that bottom edge and move it inward just a little bit. You basically want to have the same arc of a circle or something like that along the whole line. And I'll just fill in this space right over here. And we'll do the same at the bottom by adding another loop cut just to get more geometry. And we'll move this inward a little bit. Now I'll slide this one over here just to match the vertex at the top before filling in this face. Now I'll just do a few light tweaks before we continue, just to get a bit cleaner surfaces and get closer to the reference images. Okay, now that this is done, we're gonna be ready to add more geometry. To do that, I'll add the loop cut over there and move it until it matches this bottom portion here. I'll connect those two vertices. And I'll just move this one down until it forms this flat portion. Then I will add a loop cut there, slide it until it matched the other one, and fill in this area. Now I'll select those two edges and bevel them for now. But don't worry, we'll come back to this area and we will not leave it like this. Okay, let's start with the wings. So we had them split into two separate edges, and so I'll select the first one right here, and I will extrude it right until the back part. I'm doing this in top view. Now, I will select this vertex and slide it here, just so it matches the other one that we had. And then for our vertex closer to the fuselage, I'll merge it at last to the one that we created with our curve network. And I will delete this edge at the back. Before that, I want to move this vertex down, and then we can delete it. And I will replace this edge by this one, adding a new vertex right over there. Now we're lucky enough to have the cross section of the wing, and here we will trace it, but to be honest, if you don't have it, and if I was to make another plane, I would not use this method. I will just wing it literally and try to get the shape as close as I could without the cross section. Or I would start by creating this cross section, but I would extrude it in one part instead of tracing the wing like we did. But basically I'm gonna trace the wing, like I said, and so I'll select those vertices and then move it right until it meets the fuselage. And scale it if needed. Then I'll move it down just to match our position, like this. And we'll need to delete basically this edge over here. And this will get rid of the face at the same time. Now I'll select our cross section of the wing, scale it just a tiny bit. I want to make room for the thrusters. Now, once you're happy with the shape, I will extrude the cross section just like this, and scale it down on all axes except the Z. So to do that, you press Shift then Z, S Shift Z, sorry. And then I will move it in position at about the center of the wing, right where you can see that it splits into two parts. And I'll scale it down just a little bit on the Z-axis. I will also rotate it a tiny bit on the Y-axis, the X-axis, sorry. Then I will delete the curve network that we did by selecting a vertex and then pressing Ctrl+. And this is the shape that we have so far. It's a pretty good start. Now I'll select the two vertices here, the two edges, sorry, right where they become cylindrical. Then I'll turn off clipping, add myself two loop cuts right over here, and move them outwards. Now we won't really achieve a good circle with this method. And since I want something that's perfectly cylindrical, what we'll need to do is a little different. Like, no matter how much time you will spend on this, it will not become a perfect cylinder. but let me show you how we can turn it into a perfect circle quite easily. So I'll just shape it like a circle, kind of. I'll flatten the front. This is not needed, but I want to do it because it will make it easier for the next part. Like this. Then we'll add a loop cut in the center, just so they're spaced pretty evenly. And now we're going to need to apply the mirror modifier. So I will duplicate it right before, and then I will press Ctrl A to apply it. Make sure clipping is turned off, and then I will disable the visibility of the other mirror modifier. Then I will select the front vertices and right click, loop tool, circle. And then we can do the same thing for the back. But just make sure that you have a vertex on the mirror axis. Now I'll delete the other half of the mesh and turn back on the visibility of our mirror modifier and turn clipping on again. Now we could have delayed the reinstallment of this second mirror modifier after this part. That way we could have extruded a pure circle and scaled it down. And actually that is probably the best method. So I'm going to Ctrl Z until I'm back with the mirror modifier. Then I will extrude it and delete that vertex. It was not needed. And then I will scale it down, and that way we have a perfect circle and it stays circular instead of deforming because of the mirror modifier. And just like that, I will place it right over here, just before this kind of, not antenna, but this spear shape starts. Then I'll add the loop cut over here and scale it down just a bit to match the blueprint. And I will shade everything auto smooth. Now here I still have the mirror modifier turned off. So don't worry about that, it's normal if yours is as well. Now once you're happy with the shape, we're going to do the same thing as before. So delete one half of the mesh. Make sure that you don't delete the other ones. And then we will reactivate our mirror modifier visibility, just like this, and turn back on clipping. That's it. That was easy enough. Now for the wings, I'll go in side view in edit mode, and then we'll select this loop over here, duplicate it, and bring it over to trace the next cross-section part. I'll just move those closer over there and make sure that your vertices don't merge accidentally using the auto merge that's in the top right corner. So I'll move the new cross section right to the tip of the wings, just like this, and slide it into position. I'll delete the vertices that were part of the curve network because we won't need them. Same for the other side, just like this. And then we will bridge. Now I'll go in top view and duplicate this part over there, just like we did for the other cross section, but this time we'll do it for the middle one. Now here we shouldn't trace the kind of two appendages that are on top and bottom, and we will add those later on. And we'll just put it back into position just like we did for the other part. Now, if your blueprint doesn't make any sense, then it's okay to just adjust to match the reference images. Actually, here it might be even better to not even use the second cross section, but just duplicate this part over there and bridge them directly. So select your two loops and then right click, loop tool, bridge. Actually, let's use it. Let's put it manually if this happens to you as well. I'll start by filling the caps. That way I can see better where more vertices will be needed if need be. So just like that, we have quite a clean surface. And we'll fill the cap. So don't worry about that part, we'll just add some bevels to it. So select all the loops, don't forget the ends, and then crank up the bevel just a little bit. I'll just quickly readjust the position over there to match the blueprint. And then you can see that the wing's shape is pretty wonky at this point. And to fix that, we'll just need to move some vertices. So I'll just scale this loop on the y-axis. Okay, now for the top of the fuselage, what we'll need to do is basically just create new faces and try to fill in this gap. To do that, I'll select this edge right over here, the second edge, not the one connected to the intake, and extrude it on the x-axis. I'll slide it back because I moved it a bit too much. And then selecting the front vertex, I'll move it up. Now here I think we need to move this down because it seems flatter on the reference images. So I'll just make sure that it's flat by pressing SZ, then 0, and then we'll delete those two vertices. Okay, time to continue for the back. I will add one loop cut here, just so when we fill in the wings, it's going to be easier. And select those two edges and extrude them on the x-axis, just like we did for the front. And I'll rotate them just a bit to get this taper. Actually, let's look at the blueprints. I'll delete this vertex over here and then fill in this area. Now for this one I'll do the same thing, but I will delete this vertex and add a loop cut. Actually, before adding the loop cut, I will create this face, just that way we don't have to add two single vertices. So I'll add the loop cut, as I said, to match the wing. And this is a pretty good start. Now I'll slide this one over here and dissolve this loop because I added one too many before. Now I'll add a single vertex over here, and you can see that the wing goes higher, which shouldn't be the case. And to fix that, I will move it up just a little bit. And now we will do the same here. Basically, I want a flat surface between the wing and the fuselage, so it shouldn't be a different height. Now I'll continue filling this area, add loop cuts if needed. And we can delete this edge right here. But before that, I want to scale that on the x-axis. Then we can delete. Okay, I'll add another loop cut here, just to match the wing, as always, and fill in this area. And then I will add one loop over here. And like we did so many times already, I'll just continue filling in this place. I'll just refer to my reference images just to make sure that we're not working on the thrusters too soon. So before filling this face, I want to just make sure that everything looks okay. Get a little bit more height over here, and then we can fill it. Now you can see I'm modeling each part separately, kind of, before merging them. That way I can adjust more easily, and I'm not scared of adding loop cuts while I'm working on one part because it will influence the other. Now we will connect the fuselage to the wings, because I think we're pretty close with the shape, and we can start filling in this part already. Now to do that, what we'll need to do is select this vertex on the wing, right at the front, and then merge at last with the fuselage. That way we're sure that we will have a perfect surface. I'll dissolve this loop because we don't need it, and then merge at last, always making sure that the last one is the one on the fuselage. Now for this rear part it might be a bit more tricky because we know that the thruster will influence this, and I'm not sure how I'm going to make this part yet, so I don't want to advance too much in this area. But for the front, we can go ahead. So I'll try something here and select those two vertices, actually just to make this face right there. And yes, we will have a triangle for now. We may need to change that if it seems to be a problem, but for now we will use it. I'll create one new face here and delete that edge. I want to have a loop that flows around the wing. I will also slide this vertex here just because I don't want it to go inside the body of the plane. So I'll slide this one to the front, add a loop cut, and then we can fill in those two faces. Now this flows pretty smooth, and that's great. But you can see that it's pretty twisted in a way, so we may need to fix that. I'll just adjust the position of some vertices slightly, and then delete that face before adding a loop here, because I want this connection to be much sharper than it is right now. So I'll add one loop cut here and one at the top. That way we can make some kind of corner. Then select those two vertices. I will slide them right here. That way the angle where they will merge is a bit easier for them. And now I will merge at last, selecting the one on the fuselage. But now we will have some very weird surface quality, and we will need to work on that. But this is closer to the shape I wanted. So we have something very sharp. We have a loop that goes on top of the wing. That will flow all around it. I will add one loop over here, like this, and then fill in this face. And we can dissolve this one since we don't need it anymore. Now I will add a weighted normal modifier. This will allow us to work in auto smooth and have a bit cleaner shading if you want. Now let's continue fixing the area of the wing connection. And I'll just slide this loop to the front just to space them out a little bit. And then I will select these two edges and fill them together. Dissolve this vertex, fill in this face, and then we will need to add 4 loop cuts to this part just so we match the number that we have on the fuselage. I'll just space them a little bit and make sure they match the blueprint. Now you can see it's pretty bumpy, so we will need to fix this at some point. So like I said, I'll add loop cuts that match the number that we have on the bottom. And fill in this area, just like this. Now you can see at the top it's going inward, and this is not good, but for now we'll deal with it and fix it later once we have the rest filled in. So I'll add a loop cut here, fill in this face, do the same for this one here. Now for today I want to do one last thing, and this is very simple. It's actually just bridging our 2 thrusters circles. Just taking a look at the rest of the jet before that, making sure everything looks okay. But yeah, we'll just select the 2 circles and right click, bridge edge loop. So select your first one, second one, bridge edge loop, and that's it. I'll see you on the next episode, and make sure to make enough backups. Bye.